Okay, so tonight we are going to be talking about heaven or hell. Great topic. The afterlife, what happens, where do we go? Let me just put this up on the screen. Okay. Okay, so here's the topic. Where do we go? Heaven or hell? For centuries, human beings have been motivated by the promise of heaven and frightened by the threat of hell. Discover what Jews believe about, where every soul goes, and how Kaddish aids in the soul in reaching true peace. Okay, so for tonight's lesson, it actually starts off with a video. Just before the video, I just want to share that, on Saturday night this week, I got a call from a lady in Toronto. She got my number from a Chabad rabbi in Toronto, and she said her brother passed away in the Upper East Side. Her brother is 65 years old, no family, no relatives, nothing, and she can't fly in now because of COVID. What should she do? So I right away put her in touch with my Is Kaddish contact, took care of the body, but she wanted an autopsy done. In Judaism, an autopsy is a big no, we don't do it. So I convinced her not to do the autopsy. We got the rabbi in Toronto to say Kaddish the whole year, and she wanted to do a cremation in the beginning, and she said she has no money. I said, don't worry, I'll take care of all the money, no problem. And the funeral was today. So just interesting, while we have these classes about cremation and funerals and burials, so we had a live case this week, today in fact. Okay. Okay, and just a story also, just before we start, as people logging in, this was in 1991 when Rabbi Hecht, he was waiting in line by dollars by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave him an extra dollar, and he said, this dollar is for your mother. And Rabbi Hecht is like thinking to himself, my mother passed away 20 years before this. So the Rebbe, seeing Rabbi Hecht's confusion, he says, for your mother. And he's like, what is it, sir? Rabbi Hecht told the secretary, my mother passed away. So the Rebbe said, so what? And when he went out, he realized it was his mother's birthday. And the Rebbe had given him a dollar for charity to be given in his mother's merit on her birthday 20 years before. Okay, so that's just an introduction for today. Today, we're starting off the course tonight with a video. Here we go. This is a beautiful video. Pay attention carefully. It's done. It seems humorous, but it's a very, very, very deep video with a very profound message. And the whole entire class is based on this video. Okay, here we go. Peter, watch.
Birth and death are as contradictory as night and light. But they are strangely associated with an identical Hebrew word, kever. Kever means a tomb where a body is buried. But kever also means a womb where life is formed. A womb is a gateway to life, while a tomb is a gateway to afterlife. But is there an afterlife? Or does laying a body to rest in a grave mark the absolute end? If it were within our power to interview a soul, we would undoubtedly glean insight into afterlife. Instead, we have chosen to eavesdrop on a set of twins in their mother's womb to shed some light on the before life.
Hey, twin, I'm scared of birth.
Why?
It's the end of existence. We get ejected. We're finished.
I'm also anxious, twin, but I'm not scared. Birth is supposed to be a transition to the real life.
Huh. Don't give me the hiccups with your after-birth real-life fantasies. How can life be supported without an umbilical cord and amniotic fluid?
Well, maybe it's a radically different form of life. Maybe we won't need the cord.
I wish you were right. I keep kicking that thing away from my neck.
Stop spinning for a minute and imagine, twin. After birth, we will enter a ginormous universe filled with light and with air that we will breathe through our mouths.
Come on, grow some brain cells, will you? Mouths are not for breathing. Besides, if your postnatal paradise existed, why has no one ever returned from that realm? Forget it. Once we leave here, we collapse into cold, dry nothingness and wither into eternal gloom.
I don't think Mother would allow that to happen. She nurtures us in this cozy womb. She sends us nutrients for months on end. For what purpose? Just to end it all with birth? No. Mother has greater plans for us than that.
Now you're beginning to sound infantile. Do you see a mother lurking in some corner of the womb? Not a trace. Show me a mother. And as for your nutrients, can't you feel that annoying cord? Don't exchange empirical for fantastical.
Thankfully, these two delightful infants made it safely to the other side. They grew up in the universe that one had described and the other had denied. And until today, they continue their clamorous debate. It is only that the topic of contention has slightly shifted from, is there life after the womb, to, is there life after the tomb?
Okay, so that video is very profound. And it symbolized what we're talking about tonight. Because what's happening here tonight is the following. There's no such a thing as death. There's actually birth twice. Once when we are born from the womb into the world, and once when we are born through the grave, so to speak, and we go into the afterlife. So tonight we're going to be discussing what is heaven, what is hell, what is the afterlife, and as far as I recall, nobody came back from the afterlife to tell me what's going on over there. So how do I know what's going on over there? What is hell? What is heaven? Do we even believe in hell? What purpose does it serve? So this story is a parable. That video that you just saw is a parable to understand this concept, because those two babies in the mother's stomach, they live and they are nurtured from the mother. Yet they say, one says, well, I don't feel the mother. I don't know anything else other than the umbilical cord, even though we know they are living from the mother. So too with us. We don't see what's going on in this world. We see materialism, but we don't really see what is truly going on in this world. And that is what we're going to discuss tonight. So without further ado, let's go straight to the topic over here. Open up the PowerPoint. Right. So right over here, Journey of the Soul. Okay. So we are born twice. This was the purpose of the video. Once from the womb and once from the tomb. We don't die. We are born twice. In fact, the Hebrew word kever, which means a grave, is also a womb. It's the same Hebrew word, womb and tomb, kever, it's the same word. So in order to understand what's going on here, we first need to realize the following things. So just look at this exercise in front of you. Rate the following according to the degree of pleasure they would provide you. 1, least pleasurable. 10 is the most pleasurable. If you had pens, you could do it with pens. But think to yourself, what gives you pleasure in life? What do I like doing? What gives me pleasure? What do I enjoy the most in life? Look at all the items in front of you. A cruise, wealth, wisdom. What would give you the most amount of pleasure? And I'll tell you why this exercise is so important in a moment. Okay, just take just a few seconds to think about the answers here. So just to sum up what we learned so far, just for those joining now, so far we learned that there's no such a thing as death. There's really the parable of the twins in utero, debating the existence of life after birth. We're born twice, once from the womb, once from the tomb, and in each time there's a reality that's beyond our comprehension. The babies in the womb can't comprehend that there's actually a world out there, and we in this world cannot comprehend that there's an entire world in the afterlife. We just don't understand it. So in order to understand the afterlife and get an understanding of what's going on there, let's talk about reward and punishment. What does Judaism actually believe when it comes to reward and punishment? Look at text number 1a from Maimonides right in front of you. Maimonides says, the 11th of the 13 principles of Jewish faith is that God, blessed be He, rewards those who observe the commandments of the Torah and punishes those who transgress its prohibitions. What do we actually believe? That if we do good, God will bless us. If we do bad, God's going to punish us. So we're going to burn in hell if we do sins. Does that mean that if we violate Yom Kippur, there's like fiery furnace of hell waiting for us? What does that even mean? What do we actually believe when it comes to reward and punishment? Right? The Rambam continues, the greatest reward is the pleasure of the world to come. The stronger punishment is to be cut off from the world to come. So let's explain this. Okay, let's explain this with the following diagram. So check this out over here. Reward and punishment. They both come in both physical and spiritual forms. Spiritual reward and or punishment is primary. Spiritual reward is infinitely more enjoyable. So here's the thing. Let's just talk for a second about what reward means and what punishment means. When I look at a pleasure, so I can have pleasure from eating a beautiful, delicious steak. That's very, very pleasurable. I can have reward from listening to a piece of music. I can have pleasure from reading a book, watching a movie, going on a cruise. If you notice, in general, the more spiritual the pleasure is, the more it will, the deeper it is. It says in our books the following. A person can live 70, 80, 90 years in this world and enjoy all the divine delicacies that the entire world has to offer. And this person is like a blind man that doesn't even understand the meaning of the word pleasure. Because 1 second of pleasure in the world to come in the afterlife is infinitely more pleasurable than 70, 80, 90, 100 years of pleasure in this world. And 1 second of pain and suffering in the future world, in the afterlife, in hell, is infinitely more painful than 70, 80, 90, 100 years of punishment and suffering in this world. So much so that we don't even understand the meaning of the word pleasure versus the meaning of the word suffering. We don't understand. We don't know what it is. We're like a blind man. But when it comes to reward and punishment, so let's look at this carefully. Check this out. This graph in front of you. So we know that if a person works, he or she make money. And we know that if he or she make money, they can buy food. But if you look carefully and think about this, there's no direct correlation between working and making money, because you could work and not make money. You could volunteer. You could do a lot of things. You could work and and barter, for example. You're not making money. In other words, money is not a direct consequence of working. And the same thing is with food. Money can buy food, but you could buy with your money a lot of other things. You could do whatever you want with the money. You don't need to necessarily buy food. The fact that work brings money and money brings food is not a direct correlation. It's just something that happens. But how about this graph? Look at this. When you sow in the ground, you reap, and there's going to be food. Over here, there's a direct correlation. If you sow, you will reap. If you reap, you will have food. It's a direct correlation, again, versus work, money, food, which is not specifically a direct correlation. As we'll see in the next source, that when a person does a mitzvah, it's not that God is now rewarding you in the essence that work, money, food. It's not that God decides now to bestow upon you a punishment when you do a sin. It doesn't work that way. It's more like this. Meaning, when you do a mitzvah, it's like automatic that you will be rewarded. It's not that God is saying, oh, here's a candy for being kind, or here's a punishment for being terrible. No. It's if you sow, the natural consequence is reaping, and then there is food. I want to show you the source inside, right over here. Text number 2, check this out. This is from Rabbi Menachem ben Binyamin Recanati, the Italian rabbi and Kabbalist. He writes, do not consider the punishment described in the Torah as comparable to penalties a person incurs for disobeying the decree of a mortal king. Not at all. Rather, they are completely natural consequences. For one who fails to observe a Torah commandment is denied the good that naturally results from its observance. It is comparable to one who fails to sow his field and therefore cannot reap a harvest, or one who fails to wear clothes and is then cold, right? If you don't wear clothes, you are going to be cold. It's not that I'm punishing you now that you're cold. You don't wear clothes, you will be cold. The snow will make you cold. It is as natural a consequence of the warmth provided by fire, right? The wetness of water and the satiation of bread. In the same way, it is the nature of each mitzvah to provide the positive consequences that are promised for its observance, or the negative consequences that are stated regarding its transgression. And as it says, a mitzvah is a mitzvah. The reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. On a deeper level, that means the reward of the mitzvah is the connection to God. Mitzvah means connection. The schar avera is avera. The fact that when you do an avera, when you do a sin, you are now disconnected. It's like, for example, when you have a couple that fight. So there's one issue that they're fighting, and the home now is toxic. But that's the issue. The fact that they're fighting, the fact that each one is giving each other the silent treatment or whatever punishment they may mete out, that is side thing, so to speak, as to the problem that you have a house that is toxic. The point that the Rakanti is trying to make over here is it's not God is like standing there with a pitchfork trying to punish us. It's like if you go out without clothes, you're going to be cold. It's a direct correlation. If you go out without doing a mitzvah, you are going to be punished, but not that it's a punishment, it's just going out without a coat, so to speak. And with this, we can understand a little bit about what the fire of hell means. You see, when we say hell, we think, it's like a Christian concept. We think somebody's standing with a pitchfork and somebody's like stoking a fire, making it hot for you and terrible and whatever. Look at text number 4. The fires of hell are stoked in direct proportion to the degree in which the wicked fan their fiery passions. Accordingly, we must say that paradise is amplified by the tremendous passion that the righteous invest in their Torah study and in their performance of God's commandment. They take great pleasure and delight in God himself, and that these generate the corresponding abundance of light in Gan Eden. Let me explain what that means. This picture over here explains exactly what we just learned. The afterlife is a world we create with our actions. Meaning like this. It's not that there's a world out there that we are going to step into. The world that we are going to step into is the world that we are creating now in our lives. That means we live in this world for 120. When we do mitzvot in this world, when we do good deeds, when we spread goodness and kindness and positivity, we are creating the world that will happen, that we will step into in the future. So if a person is a terrible, terrible person during his or her lifetime, that is the world they are creating for themselves in the afterlife. Again, it's not that God is now going to reward me and punish me. So let's say I have 60% good deeds and 40% bad deeds. So he rewards me with candy in paradise and he punishes me for the 40%. No, it doesn't work that way. We are literally creating our own life. And this is an important note to remember when it comes to the passing of loved ones. People who have already passed away, what can we do for them? How can we connect with them? As we'll see in a moment. Any questions, by the way, stop me. Feel free to stop me. And any time you could chat on that, I'll be checking the chat box as well. All right. Let's just meditate for a moment on this video, which we are going to show right now. Meditation video. Here we go.
Today's reflection meditation is going to help us begin to appreciate the massive influence that we have by performing one small deed here in this physical world while our souls are in bodies. There's somewhat of a paradox. On one hand, you see, we know that the physical world is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just one layer or level of reality, and that there is so much more to reality behind, in back of this veneer that we see, the physical world that we see. There are spiritual worlds behind spiritual worlds, behind spiritual worlds. And yet, at the same time, we know that what we do in this lowest world, in the physical world, has repercussions in the highest heavens. How do we wrap our minds around that paradox? That on one hand, we're in the lowest world, and on the other hand, we are affecting what goes on in spiritual realms. So the reflection that will help us with this is the visualization of a metaphor. Very simple metaphor. Imagine, if you will, a lever. What's a lever? A lever is basically two things. It's a stick and a wedge. You put the stick on the wedge, called the fulcrum, and you can lift things much bigger than you could without the lever. Now imagine you're lifting a big boulder, let's say. If you have a long enough lever, it's possible. Now when you are moving the long side of the stick, think about the fact that when you're moving that end just a little bit, it's causing massive fluctuations on the other end. That's like our world. On one hand, we're very far away from the fulcrum, but it's precisely because we're far away, then little movements on this end cause massive movements on the other end. Try to imagine yourself doing a mitzvah, a physical act. Something small in that it lasts for a moment. It takes place in one specific location. In that sense, it's small. And now imagine how that small movement is really moving the long side of the stick, the long side of the lever. Imagine how your small movement here in this world is causing massive movements in the heavens. We'll take a moment to visualize and to try to feel the leverage, the power that our small actions have.
Okay. So far, so good. Again, anybody have any questions? Stop me. Now we're going to explain hell. Gehenom, hell. So, who goes to hell? Do our loved one go to hell? What is hell? Is hell terrible? Is it a bad thing? Why do we even have hell? So again, whatever concepts we know and understand about hell in the Christian world doesn't exist here. And again, I don't even know what it is over there. But here's what the Torah says. When we do good deeds, we refine ourselves. We make ourselves better people. Like my kids, for example, I try every single night, every single morning when they wake up to give charity. Give a coin to charity. Okay? Even if it's a cent, a penny to charity. Why is that important? Because they take their physical hand and they refine themselves. They do a mitzvah. So that's why, for example, the Rebbe was adamant to tell kids to say the Shema and have a pushka in the tzedakah box in their bedrooms. Let them refine their character every single day. And as Jews, whenever we do a mitzvah, we do something good, we refine ourselves. But what happens is when we sin, the opposite happens. We become more coarse. We become more egocentrical and more full of ourselves. So in order to appreciate paradise, in order to appreciate the eternal, everlasting afterlife, we need to refine our souls. So think of a white shirt that has a little stain on it. Hell, Gehenom, is just to clean up that stain, that black stain on the white shirt. I want to clean it so that I can refine myself, so that the soul can refine itself, so that the soul can appreciate divine, eternal bliss, godliness. And remember, true pleasure is in the world to come. We don't even understand the meaning of the word pleasure. By the way, that's why sometimes when God wants to reward us for doing a mitzvah, he won't reward us in this world because what's this world? You get $1 million, you get $10 million, you get $1 billion. Having $1 billion buys you a cruise and a vacation and a Hamptons home and whatever else fill in the blank that $1 billion can provide you. But that isn't anything to do with pleasure. It's nothing to do with pleasure. We don't even understand the meaning of the word pleasure. We think pleasure is going to watch a Broadway show. We don't even understand. And this concept, this idea, is understood very, very well with the following story. So check out this story right over. Oh, we got a nice picture. See over there? I don't know what this picture is exactly, but okay. So here's a story which the Talmud tells us, okay? Elisha ben Avuya. Elisha ben Avuya was one of the greatest scholars to ever live. He was a former Mishnaic sage who turned to such public heresy and treachery that he was derogatively nicknamed Acher something else. Just by the way, it's not quoted over here, but Elisha ben Avuya, one time he was watching a boy fulfill the commandment of honoring your father. His father asked him to go chase a mother bird away, and he went on a ladder, fulfilling 2 mitzvot, chasing the mother bird away and honoring his father. And while he was climbing up or down the ladder, he fell and died. So Elisha ben Avuya said, I don't understand. These are the 2 mitzvot where the Torah promises long life. When you honor your father, the Torah promises you to live long. And when you chase the mother bird away, which is another mitzvah, the Torah promises you long life. And here the child died. He says, I don't understand it, and he became a heretic. When Acher died, he was named Acher, the heavenly court declared, we will not afflict him with judgment in hell, nor will we permit him to enter paradise. Their reasoning, we will not afflict him with judgment because he studied much Torah, but we will not permit him to enter paradise because he sinned terribly. So again, he wasn't allowed to go to hell because he had so much Torah knowledge. But on the other hand, he wasn't permitted to enter paradise because he sinned. So Acher's former disciple, Rabbi Meir, said, better that he indeed be judged and punished so that he may then enter paradise. What that means is the following. Acher couldn't go to hell because he had studied so much Torah. And he couldn't go to paradise because he had sinned so terribly. So what was the punishment for Acher? The status of being nowhere. It says for the soul, the status of being nowhere is the most painful thing in the world. So what did Rabbi Meir do? He prayed for his former teacher, and he was able to enable the soul of Acher to go to hell. In other words, by allowing him to go to hell, he actually brought peace to his teacher's soul, meaning that hell is not a punishment. Hell is a stepping stone. Hell is like a washing machine to cleanse and purify the soul so that it would be able to appreciate and absorb paradise, the pleasures of paradise. That story is very powerful because it shows us and demonstrates that the status of not being anywhere is the most painful thing there is. Okay? I want to go back to the PowerPoint if I can. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. So hell is not eternal damnation. You can't read it properly, but it says, yeah, Gehenna, hell is the soul's rehabilitation. It's a rehab for the soul. It's allowing the soul to come out. And by the way, as we'll see in a minute, the maximum amount of time that a soul is in hell is 11 months. A person is not in hell more than 11 months, which is why we say Kaddish for 11 months, as we'll see in a minute. Okay, the soul experiences the negative effects of its actions. This painful process cleanses the soul, and the soul is now able to experience paradise. You see, you have it clear over here that it's not a punishment. God's not punishing us. He's allowing us to experience paradise, which, as I explained before, is the most beautiful and pleasurable thing there is in this world. Okay, and what's the maximum sentence? 12 months, he said? I thought it was 11 months. It's 12. Yeah, I don't know why he says 12 months, yeah? But sincere tshuva can cleanse serious offenses. By the way, a person, when he or she live in this world, when you repent, you can actually cleanse those serious offenses, and you don't actually need to go to hell at all. Okay, 1 second. Back to the book over here. Okay. So text number 6, this is what Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi brings in the book called Torah Or. The purpose of Gehenna, of hell, is to refine the soul and rid it of any sickness that it contracted. This is similar to the process of smelting silver, wherein the dross and sediment is burnt away in a furnace, leaving the silver clean and free of impurities. Similarly, for the soul to be able to experience the light of the supernal pleasures and bask in God's radiance, it must first be refined in the spiritual fire of hell, whereby the negative is purged from the positive. Okay, and this is from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Then an individual will also see himself in a new light. Even in our mortal physical state, looking at oneself can sometimes be pleasing and at other times very painful. Imagine standing naked before God with your memory wide open, completely transparent, without any jamming mechanism or reducing valve to diminish its force. You'll remember everything you ever did. You will see it in the light of the unshaded spirit, or if you will, in God's own light that shines from one end of creation to the other. The memory of every good deed, the mitzvah, will be the sublimest of pleasures, but your memory will also be open to all the things of which you are ashamed. They cannot be rationalized away or dismissed. You'll be facing yourself, fully aware of the consequences of all your deeds. We all know the terrible shame and humiliation experienced when one is caught in the act of doing something wrong. Imagine being caught by one's own memory with no place to escape. A number of our great teachers write that the fire of Gehenna is actually the burning shame one experiences because of one's sins. Of course, these concepts, as used by our sages, may also contain deeper mysteries and meanings, but a major ingredient of this fire may be shame. How else could one categorize the agony of concealed shame upon a soul? We are taught that the judgment of the wicked lasts 12 months, the pain eventually subsides. So what happens is like this. When it comes time to understanding what does fire mean, you see, the soul is not a physical thing, the soul is a spiritual thing. So it says when we get up there to heaven one day, it's like Facebook. You know, Facebook remembers everything you did, or Google Maps, or or the recording. Your smartphone is recording everything there is, everything you do. So there's a tape recorder recording every thought, speech, and action that a person takes during his or her journey in this world. And that tape recorder is like played in front of God when you die. And that is shame. Hell is that eternal shame standing in front of God. It's not like a physical fire. It's like it's a fiery shame that overcomes you. And the maximum amount of shame, of fire, of hell that you can have is, as he says here, 12 months. Okay, the Mishnah in text number 8 in front of you, the maximum sentence of the wicked in Gehenna is 12 months. Okay? So even in the most sinful souls, think of a person in your mind who is a terrible, terrible, wicked man or woman. This person, when they go to purgatory, when they go to hell, they will only stay there for 12 months, and that's it. Afterwards, they're done. They're gone. They will come now into a beautiful paradise, enjoying their eternal life. Hey, Gehenna, again, hell is not a destination, it's a phase. And ultimately, every single soul exits this stage. As it says in text number 9, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek leolam haba. This is a very, very famous Mishnah. Every single Jew, even the greatest sinner, think of the greatest sinners there are. Every single Jew has a portion in the world to come. As it says, your people are all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. They're the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, in which I take pride. You know, every single Jew, deep inside him or her is good. And the problem is, the issue is, what? It's like a diamond, right? This diamond is covered by dirt. So we need to take that dirt and cover around. Now, there's a question on the chat here. Laurie's asking, what about non-Jews? Amazing question. What about non-Jews? What about people like Hitler? Truly, truly bad people like Hitler. Great question. So the answer is as follows. There's something called Chasidei Umot HaOlam, righteous Gentiles. You know, there are righteous Gentiles in the world, many righteous Gentiles. By the way, a Jew has to fulfill 613 mitzvot. A Gentile only has to fulfill 7 Noahide laws. They are called 7 Noahide laws, and there are many good people. So the accepted view in the Talmud is that the righteous Gentiles have a portion in the world to come. People like Hitler, which are the most depraved and there's no good inside of them, nothing. They rot in hell forever. And by them, hell is not a phase, it's a destination, and that's it. That's what happens to them. They don't have a share in the world to come. No. Somebody like Hitler and mass murderers like that, no, they don't. Okay. One second, hold on, let's just... Okay. So again, if a person, the sages say all the time, a person should live his or her life as if today is my last day. I think Steve Jobs or somebody, live each day as if today is my last day. That means do tshuva, repent. Every single day you wake up in the morning, today may be my last day. Let's repent, let's return to God, let's refine ourselves. Let's do a mitzvah. Okay. Paradise is the experience of the depth of this relationship. Doing a mitzvah forges an intimate bond with God. See, what happens is, when a person does a mitzvah in this world, you create a deep bond with God. We as human beings, we want a connection. We want to be connected with God. We want to have a relationship with God. Right? Imagine the most powerful person on earth calls me now, right? President Biden calls me now. He calls me and says, Rabbi, I need you to come to the White House. I'd be honored. I'd be truly honored to go to the White House to meet the President of the United States of America. And if he asks me to have breakfast with him, it will be an honor for me. Imagine the Supreme King of Kings, somebody who has true power, not a president of the United States who does not truly have power, but God Almighty who truly has power. Imagine he calls me up and he says, Mr. Yankel, I want to spend time with you. How do you spend time with him? Light Shabbat candles. Do a mitzvah. So you're forging a bond with him, and paradise is experiencing the depth of that relationship. Okay. The spiritual reward is abstruse and difficult for mortal intellect to visualize and grasp as long as the intellect remains attached to a body, just as one who is blind cannot grasp the concept of colors. So the spirit that is engaged with corporeality cannot grasp purely spiritual matters. But we understand, just like to have pleasure, you could eat a steak, it's a physical pleasure, but a more spiritual pleasure is a little bit more pleasurable. Music is a little bit more pleasurable. As the pleasure becomes more spiritual, becomes a deeper pleasure. So as long as we in the body, we cannot understand what true pleasure is, spiritual pleasure. And that's why, right, like it says, text 11, in the hereafter, right, in the world to come, there's no eating, there's no drinking, there's no procreation, commerce, jealousy, hatred, or competition. Rather, the righteous sit, their heads adorned with crowns, and they delight in the radiance of the divine presence. Okay, take a look at the chart in front of you for a minute. So what that text just said is that just like a blind person, you cannot explain to him or her what it means to see. So too for us, you can't explain to us what it means pleasure, because the moment you tell us pleasure, we think cruise or eating, drinking, we don't understand. We're like a blind person who cannot see, or like the parable we started off in the beginning of the class of those two children in the womb, that they don't understand that there's a whole world outside the mother's uterus. We don't understand that whole world of true pleasure in the hereafter, and that's why the idea is it's a connection with God. So when you connect with God, that deep, intimate relationship is what you experience when the soul goes to heaven afterwards. Okay, now take a look at this chart in front of you. The effects of spiritual and religious beliefs on bereavement. So now we go into the idea, the course, which is about loved ones, right? So research shows, right, look at that. It's basically 22 studies show that there's a positive effect on a person with spiritual and religious beliefs in bereavements. This is, I guess, some psychology done over here. But let's see why we're talking about. Okay, this is just a sum up. Just read this in front of you. Paradise is not the conclusion of the journey. It is not a celestial, luxurious retirement destination for accomplished souls. Rather, it is filled with infinite opportunities that enable this continuation of the soul's journey. Okay, just take a look, just read that over there in front of you. So this study, effects of spiritual and religious beliefs in bereavement, 94% some positive effects, religion, source of strength, belief in the afterlife helps with the grieving process. I think this third thing is the key over here. When we believe in the afterlife, we believe that it's not the end. It's just the beginning. This helps us with the grieving process. Okay. So what happens to the soul? This is what I think a lot of people ask me all the time. So what happens to the soul? Look at the right-hand side here, and I'm going to explain. In paradise, the soul is in a constant state of progressive elevations. On the yard side, the soul experiences a quantum leap. Let me explain this. So based on what we've learned, that there's no such a thing as reward and punishment, that when the soul of our loved ones passes away, they go to enjoy their divine summary of what they've done in their lives. So take this analogy and think about this. Imagine the soul now goes into a plane, so to speak, and the plane is cruising. That's what's happening now. The soul, after being cleansed for 11 or 12 months in hell, now it goes to its final destination, but it's cruising. So it's cruising like this. But it's cruising.
Thanks are up too.
And now what happens is when the soul is given a gift by its loved ones below, the soul is able to fly high, not cruise anymore, but go high. The soul is able to obtain a gift and climb a higher level. On the yard site of a person, on the yard site of your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, on the yard site is the most opportune time to give the soul that gift. When you say Kaddish, for example, to throw the soul into a much higher level. The soul on its own cannot climb, so to speak. Only through our efforts, the efforts of its loved ones here below, can the soul now climb higher. Okay, let's read that again, what I just had on the screen in front of you. In paradise, the soul is in a constant state of progressive elevation. Yeah, you go up, but it's progressive. On the your side, the soul experiences a quantum leap. Okay, look at text number 12. When individuals act righteously and are outstanding in the service of their creator, they generate tremendous merit for the souls of their parents. When a person does a mitzvah here below and has in mind his or her parents, they generate this merit for them. This merit is simply by virtue of their parents having served as the instrument of their births. It is the parents who enable their souls to be born into this world, which in turn enables the many righteous deeds they perform. The parents therefore have a share in their meritorious acts. Okay, think about that. The fact that my mother and my father brought me into this world, that means that all the mitzvahs that I do help them. Right? They are responsible for me now giving charity, putting on tefillin, lighting Shabbat candles, going to visit somebody, studying Torah, doing all these mitzvot. My parents are responsible for this because they brought me into this world. So therefore, when I do this mitzvah, it gives them a boost. It gives them a present. It gives them this energy. It gives them that pleasure. However, anyone's charity or prayers on behalf of a departed person are beneficial for the soul of the deceased. It is therefore a Jewish custom to give charity and do other good deeds on behalf of the deceased in order to cause satisfaction of the soul to the soul. Okay, this is a very, very important concept, and I want everybody to understand it very, very carefully. Okay, just a question is coming up. What do we do on the yard side to confirm they will continue to be elevated? I'm going to give exact guidance. I think the next source to it gives exactly, and that explains also how do we continue to elevate the soul. But again, this is so crucial to understand because why is it? What can I, Mr. X, what can I do for my mother, for my father after they passed away? So the answer is, and what connection is? The answer is because my mother, my father brought me into this world. They were the ones responsible for making me alive, right? The three partners in creation, mother, father, and God. So therefore, any mitzvah that I do in this world, they get a merit. They get to share in the reward. Okay? Anybody can really elevate the soul of anybody, but specifically children. Children have that tremendous ability to do that. Okay, so here's I think, Nancy, this is your question. A partial list of suggested mitzvot to benefit the souls of the departed. Donate to charity. Charity is always an easy thing because it's, charity, but especially in the first year after the passing, donate daily. Even if it's a small amount, particularly opportune times to give charity before praying and before lighting Shabbat candles. So number one, donate to charity. Number two, attend these core services 4 times a year. Right? We do that on Pesach, on Shavuot, on all the holidays. Number 3, study Torah, specifically Mishnayot. Provide financial support to Torah students and scholars or institutions of Torah study and education. Sponsor Torah class. Sponsor or donate books on Torah and Jewish practices to a synagogue or library. Write or donate a Torah scroll in the deceased honor. So these are just ideas, some ideas. Again, there's many, many more ideas. But these are just some ideas that you could do to benefit the soul of a loved one. Okay, and specifically yard-side customs, check them out right over here. Look at what it says in the beginning. Any mitzvah done in the merit of the deceased is beneficial for the soul, but specifically are these ones here. Okay, so lighting a 24-hour yard-side candle, kadish, very, very, very important. By the way, Sephardim have the custom to say kadish the whole week. Ashkenazim have the custom to say it by Ma'ariv, Mincha, and Shacharit. Visit the grave, recite chapters of Psalms, donate to charity, study Torah, receive an aliyah to the Torah, sponsor a kiddish, convene a gathering of relatives and friends to commemorate the deceased. So if you want to just screenshot this, please do so because this is very, very, very important and beneficial. So you have the yard-side customs. If you want me to send it to you after this, I'll do that. And this over here. Okay, let's talk about the Kaddish for a second. Why is Kaddish so important? Why Kaddish? People tell me why it's like mumbo jumbo. Yiskadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, may God's name be exalted. What in the world am I saying? Why am I saying this? Let me just start with the story. Okay, this story is about Rabbi Akiva. The great sage Rabbi Akiva was one time going in the cemetery. Okay, the source for the story, by the way, is from the Talmud. So he sees a man in the cemetery, naked, and he's dark by coal. He's got like coal dust all over him. And so he stops the man. He says, "What are you doing?" Because the man is basically carrying a heavy burden of firewood, and he's walking back and forth at a very fast pace. So he says to him, "Stop! Can I please speak to you? Stop!" So he says, if you're a slave, I'm going to free you. I'll pay money to your master and I'll free you. And if you're poor, I'll give you some money. Let me help you, he says to him. So the man says to Rabbi Akiva, please let me go. My master is going to be very angry with me. I can't. What is your work? What do you do? Rabbi Akiva says. So the man said like this. He says, I am a dead man. Rabbi Akiva was able to see him because Rabbi Akiva was a tzaddik. That way we believe there are souls walking around and righteous people can see them. By the way, I just want to mention like pets, dogs, for example. I grew up with dogs. Dogs sometimes bark at it. They could see things that the human eye cannot see. That's just by the way. Anyway, so he says, I'm a dead man, and every single day I'm sent by angels, whatever, to collect wood for a giant fire, and then they make a fire and they throw me in the fire. And they burn me every single day. So every single day they send me in the morning to collect fire, they make a ginormous fire, whatever, and they throw me in the fire every day. So Rabbi Akiva says to him, tell me, what did you do in this world? What did you do? He says, I was a tax collector, and I accepted bribes from the rich, and I was very, very mean to the poor. That's what I did, and that's why I merited this terrible, terrible punishment. So Rabbi Akiva said, is there anything that I can do that can alleviate your suffering? Is there anything, have you heard from the angels, from God, from any source, anything I can do that will help you in this terrible, terrible punishment? So he said the following. He said, if I had a child who would get up and say Kaddish in public, and he would praise God, they would release me from this punishment. He says, but I left behind a woman who was pregnant. I don't know if she gave birth to a child. She didn't give birth to a child. I have no idea if I even have a child. And even if she did have a child, I'm sure there's nobody who would teach my child Torah. And I have no friends left in this world. Because remember, everybody, my whole town, everybody hated me. They hated my family. They shunned me. I was an evil, evil, evil person. So Rabbi Akiva said to him, what's your name? He said, my name is Akiva. He says, my wife's name is Shoshniba, and he says, I'm from the town of Ludkia. But, so Rabbi Akiva felt terrible for the soul. Terrible, terrible, terrible for the soul. So he resolved to go to this faraway town called Ludkia. When he gets there, he asks, who is Shoshniba? Who was the woman, whatever, And he says, does she have a child? Turns out she did have a child. She had a son. And it turns out that everybody hated the son and the wife. Everybody hated them. And whenever he asked anybody about this man and the woman, they all said, Yemach Shemo. Yemach Shemo means may their name be obliterated. Not only that, the child didn't even have a bris. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Rabbi Akiva took it upon himself. He gave the child a bris, he taught the child, and he brought the child closer to Hashem. And eventually he taught the child how to say Kaddish, and the child said Kaddish in public. This man, who Rabbi Akiva had met, whose name was also Akiva, appeared to Rabbi Akiva in a dream. And he said, may God grant you a portion in the world to come because you have spared me from this terrible, terrible, terrible punishment and pain that was my lot every single day. Why? Because you taught my son how to say Kaddish, and you gave my son the opportunity to say Kaddish, and because of that, I am now redeemed. Okay, that's the story. Let's now look back over here. Kaddish. Okay. This is what we learn now. Progeny, your children, right? Essentially connected. Actions elevate the soul. Others require meditated action. Okay, but this is the idea that children are essentially connected to the soul of their parents, and therefore any mitzvah they do goes straight to heaven. Okay, this is what we learned. Auspicious times. The first 12 months of the passing on the yard site, Yizkor as well. We learned this at length. Okay, Kaddish. Why is Kaddish so important? So let's just look at what the Kaddish is. Okay, you ever look at the Kaddish? The Kaddish is, It's Gadal v'Yitkadash Shmei Rabbi, exalted and hallowed be his great name. Everyone says Amen. And that, I mean, that's the theme of the Kaddish. That's in English right in front of you. It's Gadal v'Yitkadash Shmei Rabbi, Belmad, right? There's the Sephardic version, the Chabad version, the Ashkenazic version, but essentially the Kaddish is a statement where you exalt and tell God how great he is. Why is the Kaddish so important? Okay. So the answer is like this. By the way, one of the answers, there's many, many answers. But the idea is that we are proclaiming God's greatness and holiness, meaning death is one of the things that we just don't understand. We don't understand why a person has to die, especially if the person dies young, especially if the person suffered. We don't understand God's ways. But that's us living in this world. But the soul, when the soul passes on, it goes and sees now the truth. It is one with God. It sees the truth. It recognizes the truth. So the soul knows why pain and suffering have to happen. When we say Kaddish, which is testifying to our deep faith in God, we are essentially giving the soul a gift. We are saying, God, I don't understand, but Almighty God, I know that you understand. May your name be exalted. I praise you. I am proclaiming your greatness, your holiness in this world, even though my mortal mind cannot understand. This is a gift for the soul, because the soul now senses that there's somebody here who loves the soul, who now has stated that I admit, God, you are the truth, you are one, I believe in you. That is a gift for the soul. Okay, one second. Hey, there's a significance of the Kaddish. I'm going to read this here. It's slightly different to what I just said. This is from Rabbi Adin Evan Yisrael Steinsaltz, who just passed away. He says like this. Every member of the community in Israel is in a sense among those who establish and proclaim God's sovereignty in this world. As the verse states, you Israel, my witness, God declares. Therefore, the absence of any individual creates a void, as it were, in God's sovereignty in the world. In order to fill this void, others need to intensify their work and to proclaim on their own behalf as well as on the behalf of the deceased, exalted and hallowed be his great name, Yitkadal Yitkadash Meirava. With this perspective, we can understand why reciting the Kaddish elevates the soul of the deceased. Aggregate of a person's actions and accomplishments will define his or her life. However, the tally of a person's achievements does not necessarily conclude at the moment of death. A complete evaluation of a person's accomplishment must also include all that is accomplished as a result of the person's inspiration and action. Therefore, when those who remain alive do good deeds, they contribute to the deceased's balance of accomplishments. Although the deceased is no longer active in this world, his or her actions continue to inspire positive deeds and actions. That is why saying the Kaddish elevates the soul, because God is being exalted in this world as a result of and in the name of the deceased. See, when you say Kaddish, you're giving the soul a gift. You imagine you have somebody far away and you're sending him or her a gift of food, and the person is enjoying it and so much, basking in this beautiful gift that you're sending it, and the soul cannot ascend on its own. It cannot do this on its own. On its own, it's like this, constant. But with your help, with Kaddish, with charity, with the gift, the soul jumps up, so to speak. Hey, I just want to play this video here, which summarizes so far what we learned today.
Lesson 4. Where we go. 1. God's rewards and punishments are natural consequences of our actions. 2. When we do mitzvot, we forge an intimate relationship with God. In the afterlife, our souls experience the effects of our actions, our relationship with God. This is the greatest possible pleasure, and is also known as paradise, Gan Eden. 3. At times, a soul cannot enter paradise immediately, for its inappropriate actions in this world diminished its capacity to experience spiritual pleasures. Gehinnom, a painful yet cleansing process, is temporary. Every soul ultimately reaches paradise. 4. In Gan Eden, the soul constantly ascends to higher levels. Good deeds performed in a person's memory, including the recital of Kaddish, elevate the soul to higher levels that it cannot attain on its own. 5. What we do here and now is more important than the pleasures or pain of the afterlife. Living in order to receive rewards in the next world, or to avoid heavenly punishment, distracts our focus from where it belongs, increasing goodness and godliness in this world.
And by the way, next week the topic is reincarnation. I know a few of us has asked about it, reincarnation, what happens. Next week is actually reincarnation. Okay, are there any questions? Anybody have any questions on what we learned today so far? Okay, so that is it for today then. Hope you all enjoyed. And we'll see you again next week. There's 2 more lessons in the series. Lesson 5 is reincarnation, and then the 6th one is the week after. All right, happy Purim, everybody.
Thank you. Happy Purim.
Rabbi,
Hag Sameach.
Yes.
question. The Kaddish is about God, right?
Yes.
Why isn't it about the deceased person?
Why isn't it about the deceased? So the deceased right now is in a place where they are one with God. So you want to send a gift to the deceased. What you say is, Yitkadal v'yitkadash may Rabbi, may God's name be exalted. God, I believe in you. God, even though it's painful for me, even though I don't understand, why did my loved one have to suffer so much, and why am I so pained by this? But I believe in you. The fact that the soul senses that its loved ones, so to speak, agrees, admits to this, is a gift for the soul. Is a gift for it. What do you want to say for the soul? Soul, I love you. That's what you
because we say also in Ashkava when we have an aliyah, we mention the name of the person. In the Kaddish, it's
right. So the Ashkava is a more personalized thing.
It's not personalized. Yeah.
Right. It's a more personalized thing that you say Kel Malei Rachamim, that you should elevate the soul of this person, Bavur, that this person gives charity. So that's another thing as well. Yes. But the Kaddish is like so important. The Kaddish is like literally a gift 3 times a day to the person, to the soul.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, great. Tov, enjoy Laila Tov. Happy Purim. Take care.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Happy Purim.
All right, bye-bye.